Noxious.
Well, hello everybody. This is the Nightwing at Way of Life Esports coming at you guys with another video here today. This is Rift Insight Season 1, Episode 15. You know, it's crazy. We're at 15 of these now. That is absolutely crazy, you know? Mr. Buff Guy is here, and he is genuinely never happy about anything whatsoever, and he's always sad at life. Oh my god. So I'm pretty sure he wants to talk about the playing stage, the knockout round, and you actually have the solidified groups now. So that's a pretty interesting thing we got to talk about. And then you have the group stage predictions that a lot of people are doing. And guys, we are doing the Worlds 2020 pick'ems. Now, normally I would just do them in a solo video like I did last year. But hey, you know, it's always good to switch some stuff up. And then now I'll do them live in front of you guys. And then we'll see what I'll pick, you know? So, yeah. Let's start off with a small thing. What did you think about the play-ins?
I mean, it showed me like there's a lot of strength in the wildcard teams, but at the same time, it showed a lot of very terrible situations in between the regions' play styles that actually were moderately exploitable. Like the things that LGD was able to get away inside of the region that they're in, they weren't actually able to get away with inside of the group stages, even though I think they played poorly. A lot of it came down to picks that were able to work inside of China, somehow didn't work against the weaker teams that I would say. Like I have no problems. Like I do think LGD 100% was the best team coming out of playing stage, but I do think they showed a lot of weaknesses. And honestly, I can't even say 100%. I think that it's very debatable whether or not they're better than Team Liquid at this point, because they showed it was a really bad series against Legacy. I actually don't think that was clean at all.
It was just the one. It was just the one game.
Well,
that was really close.
It was. I'll point out. It's just not just because it's close. I want to point out there was a lot of very poorly done things on LGD's part. So if we look at game one obviously they played moderately well. They were able to kind of push the pace of the game, and then in the first 4 minutes of the game, Peanut was able to gank top, get stuff started from the top side a few times. Like even the gank spot, like I do think that Kramer on Misfortune very much didn't understand the Taric matchup. Mm-hmm. I don't know how he allowed himself to get stunned by that when it's a very telegraphed thing, on top of the fact that Misfortune is really good at being able to W out of the situation by going sideways, but he tried to outrun it, which is not possible. If you're already getting ran down by Taric, you have to run to the right or the left, and that's the only way to avoid it, which was kind of obvious, but I feel like he just hasn't had that matchup too often. But another thing that I had a problem with was their game 2, which they actually did end up winning, which was kind of weird. The reason they were able to win this game is because there was actually no action on the map until the third dragon, I would say, is when LGD actually started contesting. But Legacy made no efforts to actually make a gank happen or anything, which would have to happen like against that specific comp they're running, because there's a Kassadin who's trying to scale up to level 16, and Legacy made no efforts to make things happen because they had no answer to late game Kassadin in that comp. Like their best answer obviously is Poppy, who would be able to duel at the very least with a late game Kassadin regardless. But like as we saw, like they lost the first team fight LGD did, but they were able to continually like not lose too much ground in terms of, like, they always kind of came out moderately equal, even though they didn't win the dragons and all that stuff. And then the steal on the dragon kind of solidified it for them. But allowing LGD to kind of just scale up without making actual early game pressure is not something that's going to happen in the group stages. It's just not. They're not going to let them do it. No team is going to do that. Even Team Liquid wouldn't have done that.
Well, for specifically, I guess we kind of jumped pretty far into the Legacy versus LGD series, but specifically for the game 2, I think if they win that game, the entirety of the series changes. I think you potentially have them win the next game, and then I think you potentially have LGD bring it back, you know, so it forces a game 5, because after a game like that, I don't think they were mentally prepared to try and win it again in game 3, because it just looked like their comp in game 3 was all centered around late game, because they picked Draven in game 2 because they realized that if they play standard against LGD, they just have worse players than them, even if the LGD players are playing bad. That's the issue there. And then they picked Poppy specifically so the Camille can't get in, But then Peanut's still able to come in and do dragon steals. The comp was designed for Peanut not to steal, and then somehow Peanut is still able to steal objectives. So I think that they played fine in game 2, and I think that in game 2, if they had managed to win it, I think they actually do make the series a lot more interesting, because after game 2, you knew they weren't going to win game 3 because all their momentum was just gone. They were just done after that.
I mean, I don't think they played game 2 well at all. I mean, LGD picked a centralized comp around a late game comp with like Nidalee was supposed to be their answer for the early game aggression, which never happened. And honestly, you transition Nidalee and Ezreal into a mid game poke comp, which they did terribly because they always had 1 to 2 people getting caught out on the poke centric side of it, so they consistently lost. And it wasn't Legacy's kind of wow, they did that so well. It was LGD's poor positioning that allowed them to lose the main part of their.
But there was a part where Legacy were able to beat them 5v4, and they still could have pushed their advantage and set up the map for Baron. But then after that, they just take Baron and then lose. Like,
I mean, if you look at it, I mean, LGD literally never actually set up objective control vision. Honestly. Unless they were already there positioning, it was pretty much on the spot. They were never there like 30 to 40 seconds early, setting up vision, trying to get contested vision. They always kind of showed up, and LGD was just never there on time. And that was just lucky on their part. But Legacy was playing most of the situations terrible. They really didn't have good objective control. They just were allowed to have the objectives, which is a completely different thing from.
But their Legacy's comp was designed so Peanut would specifically not be able to steal objectives.
It was, but I mean, Poppy didn't attempt to do that job. Like Poppy literally only centralized around Kassadin. If you actually watch the fights, she pretty much just mimicked Kassadin's movements.
If you don't stop the Camille will get onto your Draven and then kill him. So he's forced to pick one. Either you stop the Camille, or you have to deal with the late game Kassadin that's already scaling up. And I think even letting Xie have Kassadin was a problem. He's always been a tremendously great Kassadin player. That's one of his best champions in general.
If you saw, like, Xie literally could not do it. Like, every time Poppy even got towards him, he had to flash out because, again, Poppy is a disgustingly overtuned champion stats-wise. Like, if she gets on top of you, she's going to do just a tremendous amount of your HP, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think it was, like, honestly, comp-wise, I never feel like Legacy had a terrible comp. Like, even the Game 3 with Twitch versus Taric is one of my favorite combos with Taric. Like it's an incredible one, but they never played it poorly. If you look at like some of the little, essentially what happens is you E first, and then Twitch walks into stealth range, so you stun them in stealth, and they can't see it happening. But they continually did it on targets that weren't able to be killed, like Alistar, who's able to ult out of the way, like ult out of CC and just take less damage. Like they literally wasted a lot of their, like if you ult, if you go in as Twitch and stun them from invisibility, and they're able to get out of CC instantaneously, like just at that point in time, Twitch is in the front line and there's nothing you can do about it, so he can't make it out anymore. Like he has to flash out or something, and that's just such an idiotic thing to do.
But that was a game 3 though.
Yeah.
Twitch and the Taric pick. Yeah,
I was switching to game 3. I was just referencing this in future. That's what I was saying is I don't feel like ever their comps were just terrible or had no function. They were just poorly executed each time. And LGD was not playing that well. I mean, they didn't take it. They were really pushing advantages they had. They were getting the game given to them. Like in game 2, the game was completely taken away from them because they got like not only outclassed in the early game by a lot of ganks on the top side. It really didn't matter because they just were playing people who were significantly worse than them. They were they completely weren't able to close out their wins. They weren't able to properly execute the comps that they like. Honestly, I feel like they thought about. Like a lot of people like to complain about Legacy and all that stuff, but I feel like they played to what I guess their standards were at this point in time. I mean, they did everything by the books, but they just never actually kind of practiced these comps. I feel like the coaching staff didn't force them to practice this or something because a lot of it didn't seem like they knew how the functions of the champions properly worked. Like Poppy, again, I agree with you. If they're gonna pick Poppy for the Camille, I really do think they should have banned Kassadin because she has too many targets that she's the only frontline that she can deal with them. Like she can't deal with Camille and Kassadin at the same time, but you have to deal with Kassadin, and that just makes Camille able to get on the backline. There was a lot of problems. I mean, again,
but the comp also has it where Draven has his E where he can throw the axes and knock you away, but that's not enough. That's the issue, is that the whole comp was designed for Peanut not to be able to steal any objectives whatsoever, yet he stole them because they consistently were fumbling at certain timings on their champions when they weren't able to like sync them up properly. If Peanut is nittily pouncing in, then automatically he should be charging up his Poppy ult to knock him away. Like, they're letting him get way too close, and they're letting him get in smite range that far where they know he's not supposed to be that far. Like, I don't understand how you drop the comp specifically to stop somebody and he's still able to steal objectives. That's not really based on how Peanut, that's not like Peanut being good, that's just them misplaying their composition.
I mean, they couldn't do anything. Their composition was dead by the time that just remember, each time this happened, this was at the tail end of a team fight. Like, if you see,
but they were winning team fights too. Actually,
yeah, but
that's the crazy part.
They were killing more people, but they were lower in HP bars, so they could not stop them from locking up. That was the big problem. Like, the real reason as to why this comp is able to work in the mid game, the one that they got for game 2 LGD with Ezreal in Italy, is because the poke centric kind of side of it. If you looked at at the third dragon when Legacy actually still got the third dragon, they were actually chunking out a Legacy quite a bit still, but they over shot.
Their team fight, their composition had more sustain. That's why they were able to win a lot of the early team fights. Draven has a lot of sustain, Poppy has a lot of sustain, and then you also have Twisted Fate, who's able to stun. So you have good things about their. That's why their composition is not bad. They misplayed their composition. They had a specific plan. And then I think if they win this game, you're seeing a whole different series.
I mean, no. I mean, look at it. Like, I feel like they did not get out drafted really pretty much for the most part ever. Game 2 was kind of weird to me. I think I really do think they should have had more answers to Kassadin, but like there really wasn't much you could like Kassadin. If you don't let Kassadin, one of the few answers to Kassadin is like Camille. Like, Camille can answer Kassadin because Kassadin can't get out of there or something. Like, they really had nothing for Kassadin. It kind of disappointed me. But for the most part, their comps, if you don't look at the enemy team, made sense by themselves. And that's what has happened. Oh, you scared me. Yeah,
he shouldn't be getting in this far. There's no way you should be getting this far. He used his Poppy ult on Kassadin. Like, it's not the person you're supposed to have that for. Like, losing, they're supposed to be winning this fight because they're supposed to be able to get the dragon, and that's what helps their comp sustain more throughout team fighs. That's why, like,
have to get on Kassadin. So the reason as to why they did this, if you look at the beginning of this team fight, you can see that he jumps directly onto Kassadin at the beginning of it, and Camille is forced to go in 1v1 the look at him prioritizing. Well, no, Peanut just kind of overshot there. That's the whole reason they were able to get the dragon here. But prioritizing like Xie so he can't get onto the backline every single time, and that's what won them this team fight. Is because Xie played terrible, Peanut played terrible. Like, Peanut was able to get the dragon. No, wait, no, Peanut got this dragon, right?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Peanut got the dragon, and for the most part, it was a lot of situations they couldn't win the next team fight because two of them were already dead. Xie ulted over the wall onto right next to a wall. His flash is down, and so is his ult. So there's literally nothing he can do to get away from this. No, his flash wasn't even down, was it? I don't remember.
For who?
For Xie during that fight. I'm trying to remember.
He didn't flash at all. He didn't flash at all.
Was it flash up?
It's still up. Yep, it's still up. It's still up the whole time.
It's just terrible. He ulted over the wall, right next to a wall, so he's able to get stunned. And then by the time he got out of stun lock, he was stunned by Kassadin. Like, they prioritize. The big way to win against this comp is because Camille does do damage, but with having a Draven on the team, he's able to negate a lot of it. Like, he can negate the stun because he's able to E it. There's honestly,
they have a lot of counters to what LGD put out in the game. They actually I think they had a better draft. They had a better draft going in. The issue here is that when you're winning this hard, you have to win this hard. Like, this comp is not like late game-ish. You don't play this type of comp. It's more of a laning composition than anything. With Poppy have the sustain
characters that can do a late game, but the damage dealers, which is the most important part of a scaling, are not like good late game. Like Poppy is one of the better tanks late game. She has a lot of base sustain, base resistances, and has a lot of CC, and is able to duel pretty much most characters because she has her W. But I mean, again, it makes no difference at this point in time because they poorly executed a comp that was actually fundamentally, in my opinion, better. Like again, until late game, you don't really need 3 people to jump on Cassidy. You kind of just need the TF and the Poppy to be able to do it. If you look at the beginning of this team fight right here, you can see that he attempts to do the same thing with Xie. He tries to jump on Xie instantaneously at the beginning of that team fight during the Dragon fight, but Xie is actually more proactive in that one and is able to get out of there before it happens. So all of Cassidy's Poppy CC is down. Cassidy is level 15 to 16 at this point in time, so he's able to get straight back into the team fight. And Camille is now on your team fight, on your back line, and there's no answer to it because your main tank is all of his CC is down. So they're just kind of progressively going through your back line. Like it was a very poorly done like execution of what I would say is a moderately decent comp. And on top of the fact they never really closed out a team fight, the game. Like they were ahead significantly, and like they got into the bottom inhib, they got the inhib and all this stuff, and the top inhib, and they still couldn't do anything. Like it felt like they never really had the advantage. They just had the turrets. That's all it felt like.
But I don't know. It just feels like once they lost that, no, it was the fight around Baron where they killed Peanut and they took Baron after that.
Yeah, but they died. Yeah, they all died afterwards.
I don't think that was the correct composition to go. I don't think that was the correct move for this composition to go for. After that part, since you're already, because like when you look at the game, they're already having minions pushed down mid. Their bot turret is already being caved in by LGD's minions. So I think instead of going for Baron, what you should have did is you should have just cleared out your waves and set up for Baron, because their comp can set up for Baron better because you have a Poppy who can stop PNF from getting in. They were just going like, oh my god, we killed the jungler, let's get Baron. I don't think they were making the correct decisions, because I think their comp was specifically crafted toward negating any of LGD's strengths in this game. The problem here is you have them not even setting up their waves properly. Why are you doing Baron when none of your waves are prepped? Nothing is prepped for you. Your waves are all pushing in towards you. You could have automatically left after you won the team fight, prepped your waves, and then set up vision, because your composition is better than theirs just outright in mostly every single situation. Peanut should not be able to, even if they got into a situation where they were able to, like, set up for Baron and set up Baron control, you have a Braum, you have a Poppy, you have a TF. Nidalee should not be getting in whatsoever. I think they let the excitement of the moment rush into their heads. They got too anxious and they made the wrong decisions, because there were multiple moments in this game they could win. There were so many moments they could win. These little things matter, and I think that they were not thinking about that in that moment, because they were just like, oh my god, we just killed Peanut, we're going to win the game, we're going to make a comeback in the series. That is what I was going to talk about next. That's the reason why this type of team cannot be in the main event. These are like basic boneheaded mistakes that even teams like Team Liquid don't make. Like even like the worst main stage team would not make a mistake like this overall. Like I just don't think that they understood what they could do, and I think that there's a reason why these wildcard teams don't get main or more than one main group participant in the event. Like there's a reason why it's play-ins for them, because you see mistakes like that. That game proves why that they should not have a team automatically slotted into the main event. And if we're going back to other bad teams like IMTZ and Rainbow Seven, I mean, would somebody really want Rainbow Seven automatically slotted into like group stage? I wouldn't.
Who's even argued for this? I've never heard it.
No. Like, because some people were like, well, with EU and China getting 4th seeds, why can't we just have like the wildcard teams get an automatic seed in? It's like that's not the same. Like
I just never heard that. That's
you don't visit Reddit too much, then. I
mean, you can visit all the you'll see a comment pretty much suggesting everything if you go to social media. Like I think the big problem I have with there is a lot. It's all by the books, and that's the one thing that I think is a good step in the right direction. There before I feel like Legacy never would have got any of the leads. They never would have done anything that they did now. They still lack that fundamental idea on how to close out. Like again, what you were saying is they should have pushed in the waves and then set up Baron, which is exactly what they should have done in that situation. Like there's no reason. You killed a jungler who's a minimal amount of their damage, and even though you don't have a contest on smite, you can't win the team fight leading up to that. Like unless like Kassadin at level 16 is going to wipe your team, and there's literally nothing you can do about it when you leave yourself.
That's already a problem there in pick and ban. That's the problem right there. Everybody knows she is a really good Kassadin. He's not the average Kassadin player like Nemesis. She is an actual good Kassadin because remember that All-Star game with NA versus EU? Remember there was that Kassadin game with Xie? Xie was that Kassadin. So I want you guys who watch this video, go back and watch All-Stars 2018. 18. Watch Kassadin. Watch Xie on Kassadin. That'll show you why he's a good Kassadin. I've seen him in the LPL play it, but this is just an obvious one for you guys because it's actually a pretty good match. I think the NA representatives that year put up a pretty good match against the Chinese representatives, but I'm just saying having Xie even get Kassadin is already a problem. And the issue here with LGD is that I think that LGD have to be more, let's say, mortal going into the main event. Because I think that if they're dropping the ball against like Legacy, I thought they were just going to 3-0 Legacy pretty easily, like they did with Rainbow Seven. Because I predicted LGD to beat them both 3-0. I predicted Mad to lose to Unicorns of Love, which they ended up losing to freaking Supermassive anyway. And then I predicted Unicorns of Love to beat Supermassive. So, but I guess I kind of got it correct. It just was flipped differently.
I think I have a big problem with like Supermassive. Again, I have a lot of strengths, which kind of disappointed me. I do think they were a really solid team, but
it's funny. We were talking about this just yesterday, and Unicorns of Love rolled them.
Yeah, Unicorns of Love just straight up dumpster. I mean, again, the match.
They're a better team.
They're not really. I still don't agree with that completely. I do think. I think there's a lot of strength. Like again, the jungler was completely outclassed by Kakao still, and I still think they had no answer to Armin in the top lane. But I mean, there's a lot of misplays by Snowflower that entire series. If you look at the game one, he walked up into turret. The MF, they were waiting there because they knew he was going to come. But Snowflower actually missed the recon W when he was able to just get a straight up double kill in a 1v2. Like, I don't think a lot of the things you're pointing out, there was no team play that actually made the difference here. It was a lot of situations where they kind of just got themselves killed and it led up to them not being able to fight anymore. Like
I thought Armit was a pretty good part of the reason why Supermassive were even in the game. But in game 3, if your best player is getting solo killed by Unicorns of Love top laner, I forgot his name. What was his name? I forgot.
Boss.
If you're getting solo killed by Boss, because Unicorns of Love's laners, they're not good, but they're good outside of lane. So I thought that
Armin may have been the best top laner inside of play-ins, to be honest. Like if
he's playing really well. He was playing really well.
Unicorns of Love was not the like. Again, I still disagree with that. I think Unicorns of Love had so many more weaknesses than everybody kept hyping me up to them, but it was kind of a significant disappointment when I saw in their actual gameplay. Like they were not the fast-paced team I expected. Made a massive amount of mistakes. Again, their way of playing was they didn't know how to push advantages. Essentially, what they did was they got early game lead based off of skirmishes, and then they just tried to walk it down the lane and try and force you to team fight them. There was no actual macro play. There's no significant team fight. I mean, like team-oriented play. And I thought that Supermassive, with the better laners, would have been able to take advantage of that. But again, I underestimated the difference in bot. I really did. Like that was much.
Gadget is good. I thought Gadget was great.
Xenot is just not great. He's not a great player. I really did not think that the gap was that huge, though. Like that game one was just such a massive disappointment. Like all around, I think that
I knew they were the better team. I just didn't think they were the better laners.
I still don't agree with that. I still don't think they're the better team. I just think that, again, there were so many mistakes on the part of Supermassive that there was no coming back at that point, because by the time they made it to team fights, there was a big discrepancy in a lot of their things already. Like the early game pressure that Unicorns of Love generated was actually not as significant as it was in this play-ins. Like I still think Unicorns of Love was significantly worse, than a lot of in a lot of situations than a lot of people they made them out to be. Again, they weren't the fastest paced team in play-ins, from my knowledge.
They had the fastest game time going into play-ins. So people forget to.
What I'm saying is, again, it showed that it was not relevant to this situation because they were not as fast paced as everybody made them out to be afterwards. Like Unicorns of Love was completely out. Like again, if you look at the PSG game. Like if you look at them, they had they had complete control of the game and managed to not be able to really know how to close out the game because they're I don't know exactly what it was. Like, I really don't.
Also, another problem. Why are they giving No Man's Kassadin? Are they just that tilted in game 3? They're like, fuck it, let's just give this guy his best champion.
I mean,
What is that?
No Man's just isn't a good player. I really like. I
think he's a good laner. You're mistaking bad laning for a bad players.
He's not a good player. I mean, it's all around. His team fighting is not that extraordinary. If you look at a lot of the fights inside of the PSG series, he was the main reason as to why they weren't able to win that series, because he just did not pump out the damage they needed for that. Like, I don't think No Man's is that good. Like, I think the big thing is Gadget is a really solid player on this team, and then No Man's is moderately decent at team fight. I agree, but he's still not a good player. Like, there are no significantly solid like.
I think that Gadget is great. I think you're giving Gadget a lot less credit. I think Gadget is on the same level as I think Gadget is on the same level as like Tactical, actually.
I don't think so. I don't think I wouldn't go that far.
I think Tactical is just a little bit more better in terms of like how he plays a team fight, but I think Gadget's a better laner than Tactical is. I think he's
actually
good.
Not true. Like, he's not even close to the same level of laning. But then again, that's really hard to say because laning comes down to like the supports. Like CoreJJ is just significantly better than that. Like his counterpart there. Like,
yeah, because like Unicorns of Love support is Unicorns of Love support is bad.
If you look at the what game was it? It was Team Liquid against Supermassive. And you look at like the kind of was it Supermassive or was it who was it? I'm trying to remember exactly. But if you look at that situation, you can actually like there was a like Tactical actually made a very massively aggressive play in the early game by flashing in Eam over the wall and trying to get an auto Q off. Just wasn't able to pull it off. Like, I do think there are a lot of good like tendencies they have out of these teams, but the play-ins all around were better than last year. But again, there's still massive flaws in the play-in teams. Like even LGD, who 3-0'd twice in a row after that, just wasn't as impressive as I was really hoping them to be. Like, LGD has significant flaws. Like, there's so many massive flaws in their gameplay. Team Liquid is too slow-paced, and they really are relying on too small of a champion pool to make their team comps work. Like, every team coming out of play-ins is just significantly worse than the rest of the regions, in my opinion, probably. Like, I don't think any of them are going to make it out, and a lot of them are going to get the fourth place probably. Like, I think there might be a third place in regards.
Well, the problem with Supermassive, I think that a lot of people were only talking about like Cacao and Armit, but I didn't really see the rest of their team is good. Like Unicorns of Love had because it's like Unicorns of Love had good things about them that they did outside of lane, but like Supermassive, I didn't really see much out of Balulu. That guy was terrible. Zydot played really bad. I thought Balulu played bad. Zydot was bad. Snowflower was really he wasn't even hit or miss. He was just miss.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree. Like, again, when it came down to team fights, and especially in the first two.
How you doing, Ziak? What's up, man? I love play-ins this year. Yeah, I think this was the best play-ins for all of World so far. I think this was the most exciting too.
It was definitely exciting. I think that the quality of players didn't step up like drastically, but their response or like their identity on how they perceive the game is definitely significantly more like impressive. They don't have to rely on these kind of cliche kind of goofy picks anymore. They really do have a solidified team comp and all these kind of methodical ways in which they play the game. But I mean, still, like playing stage teams, even the best ones, even Team Liquid and LGD are significantly worse than the group stages right now. They're not as good as the teams on there. I don't think. Again, do you have any expectations for any of them coming out of this?
For which team?
For any team coming out of play-ins.
Unicorns of Love might be able to make some noise in their group.
They might be able to beat FlyQuest, but again,
I think Unicorns of Love have a good shot at beating FlyQuest.
My big reason as to why I don't think that's going to happen is not only is FlyQuest significantly better at obtaining objectives.
I think they have a lot of similarities. Like they like to pick scaling mid and support.
That FlyQuest genuinely just has significantly better players. They have a lot better. They're a lot better at playing this safe like kind of play style. They're like fast paced enough. The mid, they have no answer to Power View. Like, there's not a player on Unicorns of Love that's even close to his level. Like, they don't have an answer to, like, the way, like, again, they are a lot more objective oriented, and that's not something Unicorns of Love actually did well against. We saw a few times they tried to, like, attempted to play against this, and they still were not able to, like, significantly do any damage to these types of teams. Like, I do think they're going to get last place in their group, and I think they're probably going to they might win one or a few games against they're going to win more games against the top teams than they are against FlyQuest, because FlyQuest are safer, so they're able to beat teams that are worse than them, where so is like what are the other two teams, the top teams in that? It's Top and Dragon. Like, Top Esports can drop games against teams that are worse than them because they're so inconsistent. It's reliant more so on individual play, and I think that no one's I don't think Top Esports is going to drop a game against them, but it's not. They're probably the most likely to do it because of how their play style fundamentally works. Like, if they
I could see them actually taking down Dragon X, because the only thing with Dragon X is just Chovy and Deft, and it depends on what Deft we see.
You're hyping them up quite a bit, and I think that if you look
I think you're giving them too much. I don't think you're giving them enough credit.
I mean, we looked at it. When they came against, they were not the fastest paced team in this. They did not have the best laners. They don't have anybody to match up against Deft. They don't have anybody to match up.
It depends, because with play-ins, it didn't matter if you were fast paced, because most teams either stack dragons.
If you saw, we came down to the team that has significantly better players ended up winning pretty much the entire thing. And they have no one that is as good as Deft. They have no one that's as good as Chovy. Even their top side is not stronger than Dragon.
But it's not just all about laning, though. That's the thing.
I mean, if you look at it, it came down to whoever won the lanes and ended up winning. Like, whoever won the early game ended up winning for the most part. Besides LGD's game 2, that seemed to be the statement. And whoever got the pocket picks, you ended up winning.
So do you think FlyQuest have a chance against Dragon X then? Because by that logic, they aren't going to win shit.
Most people are saying Top are the least likely to drop a game, and Dragon X is the most likely. Dragon X, again, is solidified.
Dragon X is the most likely to drop a game. All they do is play around Chovy. Like, that's literally a one-man show.
Okay, so if you
how's that not going to be exploited, though? How's that not going to be exploited?
Explain how they can exploit Chovy.
If you ban him out and you stabilize his aggression.
How do you ban him? Tell me 5 bans, even if you ban 5 times against him. Tell me 5 bans.
I will take off LeBlanc. I will take off Syndra. I will take out Twisted Fate. I will take out LeBlanc, Syndra, Twisted Fate. I'll take out Zoe. And who else was in the mid lane for him that he likes to play? Or I'll take out Orianna then. No, he likes to play Akali too. He's been actually spamming Akali in the solo queue.
So now you just named off 6 characters. They can't ban out. They can bait the 6th one, but he can't play. Can only play Orianna out of that group that you just stated. The
way that T1 used to beat Chovy in the finals, were they able to stabilize Chovy's aggression? All you have to do is get him into a position, bait him into
ideologies, and more so, I see actually no way this team is competent enough to do it. The reason Dragon X didn't drop many. They can counterpick him easy. They can't. They don't have a good enough laner in the mid lane to be able to counterpick Chovy. They just aren't good enough. Like, he's not a good enough laner.
I take away Silas from Chovy too. Honestly, I take away Silas from him.
8 champions you just named. Because
remember, they can ban 5, but remember, there's going to be mid bans towards Power of Evil too, because Power of Evil is FlyQuest's best player too.
No, we're talking
and Noman's too. Noman's is one of the better players too.
Noman's is just not that. Again, he's not. Noman's is the worst mid laner in this group by far. I think there's a significant gap between him and the top 3.
It's like Knight, Chovy, and then there's Power of Evil, and then that's so crazy how Noman's is so much weaker than Power of Evil too.
I do think there's again. I really do think that Unicorners of Love did show a lot of like talent when it came down to it, but I don't I think the reason that there is a play-in stage where there is a wild card team is not only did EU send a 4th seed, which is not something. I think even their 3rd seeds have been pretty terrible. Not only did that happen, but Mad Lions was already looking weak at the end of the season. I don't see a reason as to why EU needed a 4th seed. They just weren't good enough. They're the top 2 teams.
A lot of people like to compare the strength of regions by the strength of the individual teams, and I don't think that's true. Some people said that XL Esports would be first place in LCS. No, they're already a bad team for a reason. So that's just a fact people need to realize. If they're already a bad team, then how would they do better over here? That's not going to transition over, and that's just a weird, stupid hindsight mentality people like to use. If you're already bad, I don't think transitioning that team into another place when there's already pretty decently established teams. I know people like to rag on NA, but do people really think XL Esports would do good here? I don't think so. I think they're garbage. I mean, they're trash.
Right now, the 4th best team out of EU came into the play-ins as was significantly worse than the 3rd seed from NA. So you'd have to compare the 3rd seed from NA to 3rd seed of EU. But I think with the direct correlation, the jump that EU usually takes is the 2nd seed. That's when they start being the super massive. And again, the reason I didn't really care.
The thing was, remember how like NA was getting blasted by everybody? I don't know. I think the flame is warranted, but that's how I think it was. You know, I think that if you go into before pick'ems even were obviously when people were, you know, picking out the teams for play-ins, where they had like Mad Lions first, and then they also have, you know, Team Liquid second. People gotta factor in, like, NA does have good players and they can do good things too, but people were saying no, NA's gameplay was so bad, there was no hope for them. That's not true. That's just actually not true. Like, oh, hey, John. Oh, it's Con. Hi, Con. How you doing, bro?
So I will point out the highs Mad Lions reached. We're looking at that, and a lot of people compare that to what they think they're going to bring to the table.
Mad Lions fell off, though. People don't. Mad Lions fell off horribly. They were playing garbage.
They looked moderately capable in the
no, they played really bad. They played bad. You don't know
what series I'm talking about. What series?
Which one? The Shaka one or the Rogue one?
I was talking about the Shaka one. Specifically, they looked moderately competent in that one. But again, the reason that Mad Lions wasn't able to pull together, if you look at their picks, they started picking Orome, started like kind of tank carries, and they started picking
Jax, right?
supportive ADCs. And again, there is absolutely no reason to keep doing this. It is a proven fact. Maybe it's working in scrims, but there's no reason to continually bring it to the stage when it's a proven fact that he can't keep up. You got Genji and LGD. I have LGD in last place in that group.
Oh, yes. So before we go to the World Pick'ems, yeah, like, so I want to do a little bit of a tiny little topic of NA being bashed. I think the NA flame is warranted, but going as far to say XL Esports and SK Gaming, who are clearly not good teams, would be like first place here is just disrespect. I think that's stupid. That is just plainly stupid. I will never get behind that. They're just bad, and they're bad for a reason. No, it's just, you know, because a lot of people in the community were flaming North America, and they said that TL would get, like, shit stomped. I mean, factor this in. If you want to take it to a certain point, Mad Lions has never had a player to Worlds besides Humanoid. TL have veteran players who are literally superstars in their roles. Like, did people really think Mad Lions were going to beat them to a certain part? I did, because I thought their playstyle was better than Team Liquid's. I also said that Team Liquid, if they stabilized Mad Lions' playstyle, they would win. I did say that.
I think stabilization is such
that's what they do, though.
Yeah, stabilization. It's not stabilization. They just fought. They continually lose the game until they're winning. That's how Team Liquid works.
They don't really lose, though. They just don't make mistakes.
They do make mistakes. They go down 3 to 5 kills and then they win the game because the enemy team makes.
That's not exactly mistakes. The kills don't really matter. What matters is the
matter. What's a team?
No, what matters is the dragons and the turret plates. That's what matters. You can be down 5 kills. But if I have 3 dragons, I still have a chance of winning the game, though.
If you have 2 dragons and you're down 5 kills, you're losing the game because early dragons like the only reason early dragons exist and why they're prioritized is because they get you to that early game, their dragon soul. Like they have, like singular dragons have almost no beneficial stats. They're really insignificant in the larger margin in comparison to anything else. Like just even the BF sword, like a long sword, is almost identical to the amount of damage you would be able to get inside of a singular Infernal Drake, and just like a one specific one. Like there is almost no beneficial stats in the early game if you prioritize 2 early dragons, but the enemy team gets the Rift Herald, and then they able, like with the amount of like the gold they're able to get from that early game, they're able to push into the like a significant gold lead. They're able to push into getting like significant amounts of like vision around the dragon. With the amount of gold you have, they can't contest that anymore. They can get like the only thing you can hope for is they get steals off.
But what about the teams that prioritize diving top? Because the meta is all about getting your jungler and diving top as fast as you can to put that top laner behind. And if that top laner is a weak side top laner, they're getting shoved in.
Team Liquid win the games when they get early game. But no, actually, like again, they lost a lot of, like in NA specifically. I don't think they did it really that much inside of the play-ins, but NA specifically, the way Team Liquid work is, wow, this team is like Team Liquid is like kind of staggering behind, and all of a sudden one person would die on the enemy team, and Team Liquid would win the game because again, they know how to close out a game. If they get a lead, they know how to close out a game, and I'll give Team Liquid credit for that. They know how to capitalize on mistakes from the enemy team, but I don't think that Team Liquid's playstyles, like if Top Esports gets a kill, like now you have Knight with an extra amp tone or something like that, and he kills the backline, and there's nothing you can do. They're not going to be able to do this against the top team. Like again, they're not going to be playing. Like I don't expect these teams to play.
I was just going over NA because I thought the NA flame was just unnecessary, but I do think it was.
It was warranted.
I think it was warranted, but I think EU Flame was also warranted. Like, people are taking G2 and Fnatic's accomplishments at Worlds and other international events, and they think that means it for the whole region. It doesn't. It really does not mean it for the whole region, though.
If Fly beats Top, again, Top is
if Fly beats Top Esports, I'm going to go outside and backflip butt naked off that bridge that I live
giving
next to.
Inconsistency. Like, again, Top Esports specific playstyle is inconsistent against like bad. Like, again, I could see them dropping into fast teams, and that's something they're moderately known for. Like, their individual play might be too much for a team like FlyQuest to handle, but like Power Eagle on a good pick and FlyQuest. I mean, Top Esports getting the not only like inconsistent, like worse matchups, but like not getting the proper, like what's it called? They get a bad read on the meta, and they walk in there with a very significant gold deficit in the early game. Top Esports is 90% of the time going to win against FlyQuest, but there are situations where Top can throw the game just purely based off of just like improperly playing the early game. Like, they're going to aggressively dive. They're going to do all these things, and if they do it improperly, they're going to lose the game.
The only game they really won from behind was the C9 game when they threw. Usually TL only wins if they get ahead in lane phase.
Love is probably going to get last in their play, like in their group. You were giving a little bit too much credit. Like, again,
I think they have good things. You're always downplaying the good things they do versus the bad things that occur before that. I think they do have good things about them, but it's like you're banking on it actually happening, so you're actually thinking like, okay, if their good things don't happen, they're actually probably going to lose most of their games.
Individual player-wise, they're outmatched by pretty much every team, and that's the big problem with it. The reason they were able to push the advantages, again, the way they get it is they push early game advantages, they force team, like, they get the early game lead, they're able to snowball that into transitioning into getting dragons, and then they force into a lane and try and get there, like, and as they group into a lane, they force the enemy team to team fight them, and against better teams, which is pretty much, in my opinion, everybody else in in this group is better than them individual wise. They're gonna get out team fight because they don't set up properly for it. They kind of put vision around it, but they try and force. How is Unicorn better than Fly? We have no idea. I mean, there are a lot of people who believe that. Again, Unicorns of Love is faster paced than Team Liquid. They beat LGD pretty convincingly. LGD beat themselves almost the entire time. Like, this is like, again. LGD looked really terrible in the beginning of the playing stage, and they looked a lot better towards the end. But again, I think LGD is going to get last place in their group. I don't think they're that good of a team. There are a lot of massive weaknesses in their play style. Like, they almost lost game 2 against Legacy. Isn't about their individual. No, I agree. They go and they kind of get the early game leads by going around the map in little.
They know how to play off their champions objective timers really well when they want to team fight.
If you watch around the map and you look at a lot of their games, a lot of their like kind of wins are one off the bat of them grouping and then forcing a team fight after that. Santorin to get going. When Santorin stalls, FlyQuest falls apart. Yeah, I agree. I mean, Santorin is the reason, like, they are.
Would you say that Fnatic is a better jungler than Santorin?
No, I mean, I don't think any, like, Santorin is really good.
I think Gadget is better than Wild Turtle, but I think that
I agree.
But that's all they got. That's really all they got, though.
It's not about individual players. I agree with that, but even their playstyle is fundamentally flawed when they're significantly at a gap talent wise. Like, they've never. How many players besides maybe LGD have they beat where they're significantly outmatched player-wise? Like, even in their region, like,
even when they were losing, even when LGD were losing, they were never really losing laning or like at a certain part where it's just they got clobbered.
I mean, look at Mad Lions. Like, they in Game 5 against what's it called? He got 5 mid lane bans against him because he's the only relevant player on this team. No one else besides him was really making an effort to win these games, and that's really disappointing for me.
All right, guys, since you're all here, there's some people here that I actually know pretty well. You guys are all cool. Let's go to my pick'ems, guys. Let's go to my pick'ems. Normally, I do this as a solo video, but it's time to do this with you guys. Let's do this. My Worlds 2020 pick'ems will happen. What's the screen 2? There we go. Allow. These are my pick'ems. Make your pick'ems. Let's go. Doing this stuff live. All right. Let's start with the G2 is my favorite, but I know they're not going to win World, so I'll say G2 for last. Let's do Group D, since we're already talking about Unicorns of Love. All right, so I think this is a no-brainer. Their top esports are like one of the best teams in the world. You have Knight, so that's pretty much if they don't get first place, that is a disappointment. This is my problem here. I think Dragon X pretty much will edge it out. I don't see a world where FlyQuest actually take down Dragon X. Only during maybe if Chovy doesn't have a good game. But I do see Dragon X beating FlyQuest. And you know what? I could see it going both ways. Maybe FlyQuest do beat them one time, but I think that if you have to go into a tiebreaker situation, I think Dragon X would win. But I do think Dragon X will struggle. I want to preference that. I do think they're a one-man show team. If Deft, because it's basically, it's kind of a two-man show team. If Deft or Chovy don't really get the team to a certain part of the game, they're just not really going to do well. But I think they're better players than FlyQuest and Unicorns of Love, so that's kind of what's going to put them over the edge at certain moments. So I'm going to have FlyQuest at third, Unicorns of Love at fourth.
League's the comment right there. League's a team game, though. Look at last year's. The reason that FPX actually didn't make this Worlds is because the meta that was more team fight and kind of mid to jungle centric has kind of shifted with the addition of how important the early game dragons to early game Rift Heralds are now. And honestly, I think that FPX wasn't able to make Worlds because now there's more again.
The game went back to laning phase.
The ADC. I'm trying to remember his name.
Oh, LWX.
LWX was actually not that great last year, even though he went undefeated. They were able to win purely around getting these early game leads within roaming mid and jungle, and then able to transition it into a team fight where he's not able to get really collapsed on because, again, the rest of his team's too far ahead. But if you look at this was actually more exploited this year because the importance of individual players is quite a bit more important at this point in time. They don't focus the bot side anymore. It's more so centralized around. A lot of teams are trying to transition around the map now. FPX is quite a bit worse than they were last year, but their fundamental team is and the way they play the game is still identically the same almost. It wasn't as successful as a strategy to play the game anymore. And I do think individual players, specifically in the at the ADC, the mid lane and stuff are significantly more important than they were this year. And again, because there's going to be more skirmishes than there were before. A lot of teams are transitioning into more of a skirmish, oriented team fighting comps in the early to mid game. There's not too many players that you'll see where they're all late game and stuff. Cassidy usually a late pick, late game scale, oriented. You pick this to kind of guarantee you have a late game. But if you look at a lot of comps, they have these kind of other characters. If you look at LGDs in game 2, they have Nidalee and what's his name, Nidalee and Camille to kind of guarantee they're able to do something in the early game. Legacy just chose not to do anything. You're not going to get too many situations where you see like this stream. You're not going to get any too many situations where you see straight up what's it called? Individual
situations
where you see early game mid to jungle kind of situations where they kind of force where they're able to take advantage of these situations because you see a lot more teams drafting towards this early to mid game kind of thing. And I do think Unicorns of Love as a team is actually pretty decent at it, but they're just not that great at closing out games. I do think they're going to take advantage of the early game situations. They actually will get a lot of leads, but I don't think they're individually good enough to individually good as a team to be able to close out the game. On top of the fact they're not that coordinated when it comes to closing out. They're just really good at getting the leads. And again, if you look at how many teams did they close out the game on and really get gigantic leads where they're significantly worse than their counterparts? In Russia, they were significantly better in most matchups with a lot of their players. And what's it called? In the group stages, they lost to get a lot of their teams when they matched up against PSG, they were just outmatched. They were able to get the early lead.
Wait, the tiebreaker game when they threw that one?
Yeah,
they were winning most of that.
Yeah, but they didn't properly. They tried to force a team fight in the top side. They grouped as a team and they improperly played the team fight. And
they smashed. I think they smashed LGD pretty accordingly.
Well, no,
once it got to the dragon part.
We're talking about LGD, though.
Yeah,
LGD,
I was trying to preface once they got to the dragon part because that laning phase was atrocious.
Again, they are able to play as a team or in the early game coordinated, but they're not able to transition into mid to late game properly. And I think that's actually a weaker version of what Team TSM does. That's why I think that's essentially what I would compare them to. the mid to late game actually falls off significantly. And if they don't close it out before then, their shot calling kind of shines through, and you see why they're such a kind of weak team in general. I do think they. You want to go to your pick'ems now?
No, I'm trying to figure out why I don't have to do it to that way. It's okay. Let's have it there. All right. So am I wrong in Group D to put unicorns? It's just like I don't know. I think this is fine. I think
they're gonna have a chance.
I think they're gonna get.
Oh, sorry. Go.
I don't know. I don't know. Am I underrating them? Am I underrating Unicorns of Love based on what I saw? Because to be fair, they're playing against better competition in the group stage. Like Knight and Chovy are way more different than the players than they had to face before, and that goes for all their roles. And that even goes for team fighting, objective control, map awareness, all that. Playing off champion timers, playing off your win conditions. All this stuff is different now. Like, you're not playing up against teams like Rainbow Seven and teams like V3 Esports, like that just don't know how to do anything, But I could see a world where this happens. I think, I don't know. I'll be cool with this right now.
I could say they could get an early game lead against any of these teams.
What if I troll? What if I do this?
It's not trolling. You could do FlyQuest Unicorn of Love. I think they're interchangeable depending on how you okay. I see what you're saying about trolling now. Hey man, I'm just saying they could get an early game lead against any of these teams. Whether or not they can close.
What if I want to be bold?
Difference.
What if I want to be bold and put FlyQuest at second place to get out of the group? Like, do you see a world where FlyQuest does?
I could see a world where Dragon X is so bad and so improperly reading the meta because they're going to lose a lot of these early games against all of these teams because all of them are faster.
But they don't lose early game because they have Chovy essentially.
Well, no, Chovy's the identifying. He's so good that it doesn't matter. But all of these teams are faster paced than Dragon X. Every single one of the teams in this group are fast paced.
FlyQuest are not fast paced. They scale. So you're playing a world-class scaling team. You're playing a world-class scaling team versus
FlyQuest is still, I believe their game time is still significantly faster than Dragon X's, and they still try to make early game objective controlled plays. If you look at that, like they are still faster paced than Dragon X. Dragon X.
What if I have? Because I want to be a little bit of spice in there. Like I don't want to be that stand that's like, oh yeah, this is what's gonna happen and blah blah blah. I want to try and give
spice, give objective based reasons as to why you think these teams can. Like Dragon X could literally get last place if we talk about their play style being poor.
But Unicorns of Love, I think. But to be
fair, than PL? Are they actually slower than Dragon? I thought Dragon X was slower than them. That's my bad then.
I mean, Unicorns of Love and FlyQuest, I think, are faster than Dragon X because they do want to make things happen.
I mean, if they're I do think they kind of prioritize objectives more than Dragon X, but Dragon X again, like they are an objective based team who can actually close that out. Like I can see why they are faster. I just assumed. I didn't actually look at the stats on that one. That's my bad.
I think Unicorns of Love can play spoiler. From what I saw, I think they can. But the issue here is that enough to take down Dragon X? I don't think so. I just don't think so. And the way I saw Nomads get dumpstered by fucking Chie, imagine what happens with Knight and Chovy. Like I just can't see that not transitioning into something that's really, really bad. But FlyQuest, there's a world where I could see FlyQuest taking out Unicorns of Love 2-0. I could see it happening, just 2-0 straight, beating them. Because like if FlyQuest are able to stable off Unicorns of Love's early game aggression, I think they win it because I think FlyQuest are more of a budget TL with slightly worse players.
They were better this season than Team Liquid. What?
Wait, were they?
FlyQuest was literally second place, and that's the reason they're in play. In Team Liquid, yes, they were literally in play.
Team Liquid.
They beat Team Liquid. I know. Team Liquid.
FlyQuest beat Cloud9. What are you talking about?
FlyQuest. We're talking about
FlyQuest beat Cloud9. Team Liquid faced TSM
and beat them in the early game, and then
TSM beat FlyQuest.
TSM literally beat Cloud9 in the losers, in the losers bracket. Remember, Team Liquid had to. FlyQuest had to play the finals going into the semifinals for the winners match. It was Team Liquid versus FlyQuest. The loser of that had to play the winner between Cloud9 and TSM.
Right.
Yes, this is how it worked. FlyQuest beat Team Liquid this season. In based on, remember we were all.
Did FlyQuest beat TL in a best of 5 in the
do I need to
past 22-minute split?
Yes, pull up the bracket right now. That's literally how it worked.
What the fuck? Hold on, maybe I forgot.
Yeah, because the winner of TSM versus Cloud9 was out, and the loser of it was out. Remember? and the winner had to face FlyQuest in the what's it called. So that would literally literally mean they had to play each other. Like I think Team Liquid is actually better all around, but FlyQuest highs can really work really well for them because Ignar on his good days is a really good support. It's just inconsistencies that I think would make them worse than Team Liquid.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't know. I think Unicorns of Love can play spoiler. I think people are just looking at laning phase and just dictating that all about their team, though.
I don't disagree with that. I just think that they try and force team fights into a bunch of teams that are better at team fighting.
But that's the thing, though. You have a team forcing something, and you have a team doing nothing. That's gonna be a disconnect right there.
I just want to say, how many times did they beat a team that is significantly better than them? And I would say,
but that would mean that FlyQuest would automatically. I mean, that means you're saying that FlyQuest.
I'm saying Unicorns of Love was, in my opinion, the only time I thought they were going to lose was against LGD and against Supermassive, which actually surprised me. Again, I didn't expect that, but they were actually a significantly faster-paced team, and Supermassive had no answers to it. On top of the fact that Supermassive was completely out.
I mean, they played fast in their BO5 against Supermassive. They played pretty well overall. Yeah. I think Unicorns of Love can play spoiler. I think they can. Let's go to Group C. Group C. Genji. Oh, this one's fuck. This is arguably this year has like 2 group of deaths. Like these 2 right here. Maybe 3 if you're counting in this one too. But
I don't think Group C is at all is a group of death. I think all these teams can
get out. Well, that's the thing, though. You have a team that it's literally so volatile that you can see it going either way with any team, though. I'm gonna keep Genji right here. I think they're the strongest team in this group going in. That's the problem, though. It's everybody else. That's the problem. Everybody else.
I think, again, let's think about this right now. I think Fnatic is actually inconsistent. On their highs, I think they're gonna get second place, but their lows is the big problem. And I think the inconsistency is the thing that I don't know actually where I could put them. They can go for anywhere from second to fourth, I think. And honestly, like really, their grasp of the meta, EU is really identified that Korea really doesn't adapt as fast as the rest of the regions. They're just really good at mastering things. And
Fnatic only played through self-made, though. Like if we're talking about a one-man show, Fnatic is a one-man show.
Yeah, I mean,
they literally are.
Nemesis is either somebody who can duel the best the West can offer, or he's somebody who's going to be a liability. Hylissang is just either hit or miss, and it's really inconsistencies. I think that Fnatic could easily get second place in this group, and it really could take a game off Genji if we say anything. But it really comes down to whether or not they can play at the level.
I really don't think LGD were that great.
No, I put LGD at last place. I really do think they're significantly the worst player in this team.
Is this crazy? Is this crazy?
No. I think TSM is probably going to be the one that gets out, in my opinion. I think TSM probably
what the day where I'm rooting for TSM, fuck.
I think the reason that I think TSM will get out of this group is because, again, inconsistency on Fnatic's part. I think TSM is going to play at their bad...
Peanut? Well, hold on. Self-made and Peanut versus Spica?
No, it doesn't matter. It's not about jungling at this point in time. I do think that Spica has really stepped it up. You have to give him credit. I think I
don't think it's better. He was never better than Self-made all year.
He's not better than either one of them. That's not what I'm saying. I think that it's significantly to the point where I think that he's just going to be that team fight oriented, just a better version of Brox at this point, where I think that he's actually going to pretty much be that person that is able to make plays in team fights but has no impact in the early game. And he's really, again, that's all you need him for at this point. LGD is going to come out strong. You guys are falling. No. They didn't. They actually, again, if we look at LGD, the reason that I actually don't, I already went over the LGD versus LC, Legacy. I really did think that they played terribly, and they weren't punished because Legacy is a terrible team. But again, if we come, I don't really, I don't think I should go over that again, should I?
Go over what?
Over the LGD versus LGC kind of series.
Well, what about the games that they lost in play? I mean, they did stomp the other games that wasn't that game 2 from the Oceanic team.
I really, again, I think you're I really don't want to undersell TSM because I think the significant gap, TSM can't beat Fnatic at best days.
There's such a big gap between Langx, the bot lane, and Shie, and Shie can match Bjergsen.
No, the problem with, the big thing about it is obviously LGD was better than everybody in the play-ins, but they still lost. The reason for that in the best of ones is because that their playstyle is so terrible at actually mastering objective control, and that's not something TSM goes for. TSM is literally just going to go for high octane, fast, aggressive plays, And that's something they really struggled against Unicorns of Love, and it's against better players, in my opinion, this time. I think if I had to pick anything, I really don't think if Bjergsen gets ahead, there's not going to be an answer to him. He's been playing out of his mind recently. He really can take over games. And
but that's the thing, though. Playing up against LGD, Bjergsen will just get stopped. That's the thing.
Well, we'll see about that. I mean, again, I don't
think
if
TSM's players get stopped, they don't really do much. They kind of just fall over.
Xing is really getting oversold a little bit now. I do think he's a good player. I don't think he is a world-class mid laner. I don't think he's that good. I think GA is a good mid laner, though. Over the years, G2 and almost lost in play-ins when they went to semis. I think LGD. I mean, it's possible. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of ways this world can play out. I'm really going based off of what I saw in play-ins. I really
that's what we saw, and that's the thing, though. We saw them fundamentally struggle in best of ones. Yeah. So is it hard to say they would struggle in another set of best of ones against
we could
better
say
teams?
They got their jitters out in the play-ins, but we'll see what happens. I just want to say my objective, what I think based off how they played, I really do think they're going to struggle in this series because, again, if it goes down to it, they really do have it. They were out, like, honestly, I feel like they were out drafted for the most part inside of every single game, inside of LGC's kind of thing. And that's really something TSM struggles with. They really do have a bad drafting system, and that's one of the weaknesses that I don't think LGD
You
is
know
gonna
what?
point.
You know what's funny? Fnatic has always made it out of groups, except for 2014 Worlds. Except for that Worlds, they've always made it out of group stage. They've always managed to pull it together.
I don't want to use past precedences.
Like, because at one point they won't be able to.
I think Genji is the probably 100% going to get first place, but everybody else is kind of like anybody could get second place. I do think TSM is based off their most recent performance. I do think TSM is going to get second place. Play-ins win every lane, round, taking bad for vision. They cleaned that. Well, no, the big if we look at the game 2 specifically, that is the one where I want to identify the biggest weaknesses. They had a team fight oriented team, again, their big thing about it is they drafted Nidalee to kind of match the aggression that Legacy could put out because they didn't have an answer because they drafted Cassidy in a lot of losing lanes. But Legacy never took advantage of that. Legacy really just focused on objectives, which LGD never took it, actually had to contest.
Just what I have LGD, here so far.
And then, game 3, is this really that crazy for me to say?
No. This is what I have here so far for the group.
I have here. I thought you had to hear. I just see LGC. No, I mean, I don't agree with that. I think Kramer and Tucson, not Kramer, Tucson, Jesus. Kramer and
Mark are not that great of a bot lane, but Kramer as an individual player is good.
He's a good player. I do think he dishes out a lot of damage. I don't think she is better than Bjergsen. I disagree with that. I do think she actually loses that matchup. And
I don't think he does. I think Shie just stabilizes Bjergsen. I think he'll just destroy him, honestly.
I don't agree with that. I still think
if Bjergsen gets shut down by Shie, I don't see anything about TSM that'll make them beat LGD.
Tell me what you can shut down about a TF. You have to ban TF. I think that
they'll ban TF and Bjergsen. They'll ban TF. They'll ban Dillion. They'll ban Syndra. What else is he gonna play?
He plays a million other champions that I think he's incredible.
But he doesn't have that. The impact is lessened.
His impact is lessened. I agree with that. Bjergsen is not. I disagree with that completely. He's not only. That's just the one you see the best out of him. That's That's like saying back in season 4 that Faker was a LeBlanc only player because that's the one you had to constantly ban. They've shown Cassidy bullies TF and lane. Yeah, so does Fizz.
Do you see Peanut? Do you see Peanut?
I don't see them letting Cassidy through the banning phase. Even TSM won't do that. I mean, she has really only impressed me massively. Not even massively on Cassidy this year. He's not really been that impressive recently. I think that LGD is probably going to struggle in this because, again, I really do think people are overhyping. She is still the same She we saw years ago. He's not significantly better. He is slightly better. But
I think that if you're comparing the two, I think Bjergsen is like a 9. If you wanted to compare on a scale, I think it's maybe it's 55-45 at that point.
Okay, so the first ban or rotations, I think Orianna is going to fall out completely. I don't think Orianna is going to stay as a first ban rotation inside of this play-ins. There's going to be Ornn and Graves that are going to be probably perma-banned. Lilia is going to be picked by the enemy team, but I mean, it's not something. What's his name that we're really gonna I don't think that Spick is really good at that. I do think he prefers the set and other Graves and kind of situational characters like that.
Let's say it comes down to this. Let's say it comes down to a tiebreaker game. Do you see Bjergsen blind picking Cassidy, him being confident enough to play Cassidy?
Why would you want to take
TA? I actually think if it came down to a tiebreaker situation, LGD would beat them based off drafting phase alone. Because
drafting phase is the weakest part of it. I mean, LGD was outdrafted every single game, and
I'm not specifically the whole thing. I'm talking about just the mid lane. I think that Bjergsen will want to have the safe pick, while Shie will be. I think he'll be confident enough to take the Kassadin or the TF to take over the game in a tiebreaker game. I don't see Bjergsen taking
enough
that
openings. Pick. You don't see him taking that pick. I don't. My big thing about it.
It didn't happen in the other tiebreaker years. It didn't happen then.
Yeah, because he wasn't as strong back then. There was like 3 straight seasons where Kassadin was terrible.
No. Like in the tiebreaker games they lost, that in the past with Bjergsen, he didn't take that pick that took over the game. He just picked like Zilean and Orianna.
Zilean does take over the game for him, to be fair, and Orianna.
But it didn't against the better players though. It didn't against the better players though. Crown.
Crown was a better player than
not Crown. Freaking hell, Zilean. It was a Xiaohu.
Crown was a better player back then.
It was Xiaohu in the tiebreaker RNG match, and against Power of Evil on this.
I don't think she is a better player than him. I think she is not a better player.
Actually, I think it
might be even. I do think Bjergsen, as his current form, is better than GA though. And that's the big thing I'm going for. Strong laners, team fight like TSM. Yeah, I mean, this guy is wrong on the outdrafting comment. There's no way TSM doesn't first pick TF, ban Kassadin in first play. If they don't ban TF, then LGD will pick it, and TSM suck versus TF. I mean, possibly. There's a possibility that, I mean, they're obviously going to get their own first side weakness phase on that. I mean, they could ban Kassadin and TF, and I still think he has a pretty solid. But that just means that LGD is probably going to ban the Zilean. I do think that he has a significant. Again, I think laning wise, he's still really good at pretty much every other character. I think his Syndra is really good still. His Orianna is good.
But that's the thing about TSM is that people are only going to focus on Bjergsen. Like I don't think the other players.
Big matchup. The big matchup that matters the most is this one. I think that.
No, but like everyone else is more important too, because this meta is all about playing towards topside and diving topside. Do you really think Broken Blade will beat up? Like, do you think?
I don't even know if that's 100% sure if they lost every single game without TF or Zilean. I mean, I think that's the one where they completely took over the game. Do I think Broken Blade will beat TF? It's not about beating at this point in time. It's about just like coordinated dives in the top lane. Laning wise, almost doesn't matter anymore. Or the Shy would be at Worlds right now.
Oh yeah, guys, we're not fighting. We do this all the time. This happens literally off camera all the time. No. I'm just letting people know, like, because there are a few like.
No, I think the big thing about it is if we saw strong laning top laners completely take over the game, TSM's most important thing is Spica and Broken Blade. Spica's really stepped it up. I still think he's a terrible jungler, but he's less of a terrible jungler. And Broken Blade has really...
He's going to beat Peanut? Peanut's been playing bad, but he's not as bad as Spica.
Laning phase is still all that matters. I said in like individual player-wise, they still matter. I didn't say laning-wise specifically. I'm confused. I specifically said their individual talent, did I not? I might have not have. I don't know.
This is what I got here so far. Like, the thing with me right now is that I think people only focus on Bjergsen when you're mentioning TSM. The issue here is that's the LGD of other parts you can play through from effectively.
I was specifically talking about mid lane because it's the most impactful. It's
possible. But I think that you got to take the factor in that if Shie does stabilize Bjergsen and makes his impact not effective, who else can TSM really play through to really exploit LGD?
I mean, I think TSM is really oriented around first, like, early game aggressive plays, and I think LGD is also going to do that. But again, the thing about this is neither one of these teams prioritize dragons, which is kind of weird for me. Like, I'm not sure who's going to be taking that.
I mean, for going by objectives, I would say
TSM
LGD.
Is always, probably LGD is probably the better one.
At objectives, yeah.
Yes, Spica was TSM's MVP during the finals. I think he's been one of the weakest points till that specific point. In the playoffs specifically, he steps it up like drastically.
I think I'll leave. I think I'll leave it like this. I mean, but I could see this happening too. I think LGD should have aligned their cards.
Fnatic on a good day is really good. I think that we really are.
You want to see this then? Do you want to see that?
No, I think that I just want to take in consideration that it can go any way. I think any of these teams.
This is what you want. I know what he wants, guys. Don't worry. I know what he wants. There you go. Genji dropped out of groups before. Oh god. All right. So that's enough of this group. It's just the hard one right here. It's either these two. I'll leave it like this. All right. Group B. Rogue, JDG, PS. I mean, this one's pretty easy for me. This one's pretty easy. I think Damwon are better than top esports, actually.
I think Damwon top. I mean, Damwon, JDG. Then the last two are kind of hard for me. I think PSG is the thing that would kind of sell me on PSG not making this because their two best players are not going to be inside of the play-ins. I don't
Yeah,
think.
and you also got to factor in it's subs. The subs won in those games. Now you have to kind of factor in they're playing with a real roster. Yeah.
I think that one's pretty straightforward. I mean, I think the big
Rogue
difference.
Rogue could play spoiler, maybe.
Rogue can definitely play spoiler. They really like the problem
They
is
could
that
beat JDG. Rogue beat JDG.
Such a kind of massive downgrade from the rest of the region, like the other teams, that I think he's going to be the reason as to why they can't play spoiler. But again, it's not like they're bad all around. Again, they have a really good bot lane. I think that it is something they could rely on.
What's his name? Who's Rogue's mid laner? Larson? I think he can stabilize you. I don't know about stabilize Yagao. I think he can go even with Yagao. If Yagao and Kanavi, they don't really have the best synergy. And I think that Larson and Inspired have better synergy than those two. But I think the other parts of JDG just massively outstomp Rogue. Like the top lane, that's not even close for Finn. Finn's going to get curb stomped by these two. He's facing Naguri, and he's facing, because JDGs have Zoom, right? Or is he 369? I mean, JDG have Zoom. Yeah, they have Zoom.
I'll be honest. I mean, I think it's really a toss-up for me. I think Top Esports and Damwon really do have a similar play style. It's just I don't know.
Who's the smarter team at aggressive play styles?
I think Damwon is a little more coordinated, but Top Esports might have the better. Let me think.
I think Damwon have the better grasp of how to play around a team fight. I don't know. It's just, this is all difficult to really pick because I like to be accurate with my predictions, though. That's the thing. I like to be very accurate with all of them. Kind of like that year where I picked Cloud9 at the group. Oh, my Lord. All right, so you have my team here. G2 Esports, Team Liquid, Machi Esports, and Suning. This is bold, but I think I'll be set on that one. The first spot will not be changing. I don't think G2 are getting first place in this group this year either. I think Suning is a great team. Because people have to factor this in. People are only looking at the last two best-of-5 Suning played. That is not an indicator of how strong they are. Because the other games in the regular season, when they played best-of-3s, they stopped anybody who didn't have a really world-class... They stopped other teams who didn't have world-class players. They kind of only lose to teams who are just better than them. But they are better than... almost half of their competition, honestly.
I mean, I think G2 is probably going to get first. Again, Suning is a team that doesn't...
Not against a Chinese team. They play bad against Chinese teams. Especially
I really don't want to go with that specific. I'm sure they've worked on something to be able to specifically master going against Chinese teams. The big thing about it is Jankos, their strongest player, I do think is significantly outmatched by SOFM. SOFM significantly, I would say that. I think that SOFM is significantly better than him.
I think if you want to take G2, because Suning live and die by SOFM. He's their whole team.
I mean, Angel's really good. I mean, what's his name? I always say his
Huan Fong and Sword Art
is a really solid laner. They're always gonna he's just Kramer, Kramer, but a better version of him in my opinion. He plays supportive. What's it called? He plays supportive ADCs really well, and it's really good for this team because they don't really focus around the bot side of the map. We see a lot of roaming supports around Sword Art. We sound SOFM kind of objective-based and more so centralized, again, the meta centralized towards top side. They're going to get those early game dragons against G2 because G2 doesn't prioritize them as significantly as Suning does. Suning is a very objective-based control. That's probably the most objective-based control team in the world.
Am I underrating Team Liquid?
Team Liquid, I hope G2... I'd love for all of the Western teams to get out. That'd be incredibly fun. I just don't expect it. It's not something I do expect.
Imagine, all the Western teams get out, and the Chinese teams just collapse, and you have a quarterfinals of Team Liquid versus Rogue or some shit. It's a shit festival worlds then. That's a terrible world.
G2 is not going to get stifled by this because their playstyle doesn't really. It's more so gank oriented, which is something that Suning doesn't actually 100% focus on. I think that G2 has one of the few teams that I think they really do match kind of the top tier Eastern teams in players. Because they have a lot of individual wise, all of their players are kind of superstars in their own region. Wonder's playing pretty well recently. Caps is still a really solid player. I think that Perks with all that stuff that happened. I understand why he played poorly. It's a really hard thing. But Jankos again, I think that it's gonna have to come down to Jankos actually stepping it back up because this is gonna be the deciding moment on whether or not they're able to beat him because SOFM is the key part of this team. I don't think.
But that's the thing, though. Suning live and die by SOFM. G2 don't live and die by a one specific player, though.
I don't
That's
want
gonna-
you to completely get undersold on LGD. They were not as good specifically inside. Like they were a lot better post like best of ones. I do think they played a lot better. Like a lot of their weaknesses were shored up, but I
you
still
talking
think,
about Ziak? You talking about his comment?
yeah. Sorry, I didn't. I don't. I usually just kind of address them without actually saying their names.
I don't know. For me, I think there's a world where G2 gets first, but I don't see it in the way that, like, Bin only lost to top laners like Zoom, The Shy, 369. I mean, unless you're those three players, his biggest competition is, like, what, Wonder?
Wonder's pretty solid.
I think Wonder can take him on and beat him, but, like, at that point, like, I just don't see this iteration of G2 really having getting a big, massive lead against Suning. I think they're good enough to match G2 at every single position and then basically play their playstyle better, honestly.
I mean, their playstyle is... What do you mean their playstyle?
Like, I don't even see how, like, if you watched LPL and you watch Suning and you watch G2, I don't see how people can really put G2 over Suning. I just don't see it. I just don't see it based off all the games I've watched all year from these teams. Even just summer. Like, for summer, Suning were literally not as bad as people are making them out to be. They actually beat pretty much everybody except for teams that had world-class players like IG, sometimes FPX. Suning stomped FPX, didn't they? I'm pretty sure they stomped them every single time. Like, Suning only really lost to teams with players like Rookie, players like Zoom, players like 369. That's it. So if you're not those type of players...
I think Bin is a good player. I think individual-wise, his ability to lane is probably his best position. Again, as I've said before, like laning top lane specifically, again, there's a lot of like ganks centralized around the top side. You're not going to get as much like individual or freedom to be able to just completely flex on them because there's going to be mass meta ganks in the meta that's specifically right now for them to not be able to do anything about it. Like again, the individual player will usually shine through regardless, but there is going to be a lot less laning freedom that's going through top lane. It's shown in the play-in specifically.
All right, guys, this is what I got here so far. I'm locking this in. Group A, Suning, G2, Team Liquid, Machi. I feel bad for TL because they did play better in the playing stage. Group B, Damwon, JDG, Rogue, PSG Challenge. Group C, Genji, LGD, TSM, Fnatic. Group D, Top, Dragon X, Unicorns of Love, and Fnatic. The only thing I'm leaning towards right now is potentially swapping Fnatic up here. But these teams are both inconsistent, so it's kind of just like either or. I could see a world where this is a thing too.
I really see it. Think we're giving LGD too much credit. But how do y'all think Korea will do? They did not practice in the Chinese super server.
Oh, but they're fine. They have their own Korean server, which is insanely good. I think they're fine, dude, honestly. Yeah, I heard about that, but they have their own great league server anyway, though. Their server is insanely well. But that's just me.
I mean, there's always inconsistencies, which I actually don't know how good every team's going to be doing. Like, is Damwon, who actually had their best player had a very major medical issue, is that going to make him play significantly worse?
My changes have been saved. My pick'ems are in. It's crazy. All right, okay, I'm good. I'm good on that. But I do want to pivot towards something different, which was one of the other parts of this, which was the group stage, which it starts this Saturday, right? It starts on the 3rd, which is on... When's the 3rd? The 3rd is... Yeah, Saturday. Okay, so you have the opening matches. You have... My God, there's no pressure. There's FlyQuest versus Top Esports. That's the first match. Can FlyQuest upset Top Esports? Holy crap. Like, if that's not pressure, I don't know what is. Like, if that's not pressure, that is, like, opening game. I think if they lose this game, they're probably not going to be making it out. Like, or you can take it this way. If they beat Top Esports, they are in a good position to get out of the group. That's two ways you can put it out there. But I do think Top Esports beats them.
I do want to point out, again, when it came down to the Rift Rivals, actually, the most successful team besides SKT when they were kind of doing their little thing.
Oh, you want the mid-season
Dragon X, whatever it's called. Dragon X actually did play significantly well against the Chinese teams, which I do want to take into consideration. That specific play style seems to be moderately competent against them. Like, usually the slower paced teams didn't do well in like the previous season, but it did seem to have a bounce back this season with JDG being the best team in China, and Dragon X doing moderately well. And we saw Team Liquid and FlyQuest with that specific playstyle do well in NA. There's been a lot of teams, and then Origin moderately did well for a little bit until they fell off. Like there's been a lot of teams that have been playing this specific playstyle that have kind of bounced back in relevancy. And I think that's going to be something we have to take into consideration because that is specifically the playstyle of FlyQuest and what's it called? FlyQuest and Dragon X. And I think that we're going to have to see whether or not this has been. We're going to be able to see based off, in my opinion, probably the Dragon X versus Top Esports, if that's still kind of something the meta is going to be shaping around.
But how I don't know. I think Dragon X. I don't see it personally. Again, like between FlyQuest and Top, you have Jackie Love, Knight. I mean, like the only way FlyQuest win is if you exploit their bot lane. Top Esports bot lane is exploitable if you play correctly and do specific things, right? But do you see a team like FlyQuest doing that? I just don't. I just don't see them doing it. I gotta go Top Esports on this one. Like I do think if FlyQuest win this, they are in a good position to get out of the group. If you win this, you put yourself literally almost out of the group by that because that's a big win right there. So I'm going Top Esports. I think there's a world where if Top Esports don't blow them out completely, I see FlyQuest have a good late game. I could see them maybe winning late game.
I think that the player-wise is such a difference in Top Esports, it might not matter.
I usually like to say that they would punish Knight's over-aggressive tendencies, but I don't see that coming from FlyQuest, honestly. All right, Dragon X versus Unicorns of Love.
I mean, I don't see them winning either, but I'm gonna hope they win and be glued to the screen rooting for. I'm always gonna cheer for NA teams. Like I'm like there's always a part of me that wants NA to like win, just because. I mean, again, like it is the region that I'm cheering for. But again, at the same time, I'd prefer if it didn't come off the back of somebody underperforming. It's not fun to watch a good team play poorly and the underdog be able to pull out.
I mean, they could play poorly, or you could just play that much better. You never know.
That is just a hypothetical situation. I'll be. Like,
it's not what you're giving. How would you know if they're? I mean, like
when I see them playing, if I see them playing, you'll be able to tell whether they're playing well or not. I mean, there's like an inference you can make based off of how the game's going and how they're acting.
That's only something you would say for the Western teams. Like if that happened to a Chinese team, would you say the same thing?
It's not about that. It's about whether or not the players that I thought were going to play well played to the standard I expected of them. Like that's what you should be going for, and that's why I think Western teams are significantly worse. Is because their players and all these specific playstyles are never matched against the Eastern teams. It's not anything that it's not because of they played because we've seen a lot of teams underperform and then the people are given credit for beating them when in reality there's a lot of underperformance on the enemy team. But
what I'm saying is like
when a
certain Eastern team wins, it's only because when they lose, it's only because they played poorly. It wasn't because the other team was playing good either.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, you can tell whether or not a team played poorly, and that's the big thing. You need to be able to tell yourself. It doesn't come off of hypotheticals or anything. If you can't tell, there's not going to make a difference.
Unicorns of Love versus Dragon X. You got Dragon X, don't you?
I mean, I expect Dragon X. Unicorns of Love specifically matches up well against them, which is kind of weird to me. But I do think they actually match up well. But again, at the same time, Dragon X is going to be that team when they try and force their team fights in the mid lane. I do think Dragon X is going to be able to find little spots where they can get into the team fights and be able to get into them. Because, again, they play around depth, and I think they don't really have an answer for depth. But, again, Unicorns of Love is fast-paced. They might be able to pull out a win against them. We'll just see if that actually happens, though.
I'll pick Unicorns of Love for today. I'll go top Unicorns of Love because you got to be spicy.
Don't be spicy.
Rogue versus PSG Talon. I see Rogue winning that.
I do too. I think PSG Talon is not going to win a game.
There's two marquee matchups for today. You have Damwon versus JDG.
Damwon is. Well, I really am excited for that one because that's going to show whether or not Damwon's actually competent enough to be able to beat top esports because. This specific playstyle is shown to be able to work against them, especially with the team that they got going on right there. But whether or not they're able to play to the same standard that top esports was be able to the pressure they're able to dish out, because I don't think they're going to win a late game team fight. Obviously,
I'm not surprised if JDG beat Damwon. If they can beat off top esports, beat them in finals, and literally they should have won that last game against them. I think there's a world where Damwon loses this. Because I think JDG is better late game. I think Damwon's better earlier on. And I'm taking Damwon because I think they're the best team at the tournament. Then you have Genji versus Lgd. Genji are inconsistent in their own way, but LGD got a chance to play through all their kinks. Potentially, they got a chance to play and beat up on some weak teams.
I agree. I think LGD might actually win this purely based on the fact that they played recently.
They literally just played recently. I'll go LGD for this one, actually.
I think LGD might take this one out. And then I think...
And then you have NA versus EU, the two biggest toxic fan bases, TSM versus Fnatic. Holy shit.
I want to point out
good matchups today. I like this day.
TSM can't beat Fnatic on their good days. I still think that's the case again. But TSM can beat a bad Fnatic. And that's the honestly, it's gonna be what Fnatic do you think is gonna show up? Or you think it's gonna be the team? Because
it depends. Like there was the tweet recently where Yanko said if they played like best of fives, it was after the Mad Lions series. He said if the EU teams played best like at Worlds right now or like best of fives against the Asian teams, they would probably lose pretty badly and knock it out of group stage. You know, things like that. That's pretty worrying right there. But then again, TSM's not from the LPL or the LCK. That's the thing right there. I think that it's hard to really pit what's going to go on because Fnatic have been so heavily invested into self-made that it's really hard for me to really pinpoint who is a strong laner for them to play through or where their playstyle is going to come from. You know, it's really just off the back of self-made and whatever champion he's on. If he's on Hecarim, if he's on Lee Sin, you can tell what game they're going to have. Now, if self-made is on something like, let's say, I was going to say Graves. Well, Graves kind of gets thrown into that Hecarim Lee Sin bundle. Let's say if self-made is on like a Lillian. Is that her name? Lillian? The champion?
Lilia.
So, like, I think he's going to have a marginally less impact on it in terms of what Fnatic are going to be going for. So I don't know personally. I think that Beerson has been playing much better than Nemesis. I think Broken Blade is more consistent than Bwipo. I think that Hillsing is better than Bifrost, but we don't know what Hillsing is going to show up. I don't know.
Again,
Reckless can match Doublelift. I'll say that. Reckless has been playing better than Doublelift pretty much all year. So I'll give it that. I think Fnatic have good things about them, but Bwipo is so feast or famine that if Bwipo gets an early lead against Broken Blade, which he did last year when they played, it was very, very clear Bwipo was better. I could see it happening, but I think that right now, in terms of as how a team should play, I think TSM is going to take it.
Not really got any disagreements. I think that the key matchups are going to be the top lane and the support. I think the most inconsistent players on this team are going to be deciding whether or not TSM is actually able to beat them or not. Because I think Hillsing and Bwipo playing well is going to be something that TSM doesn't have an answer for.
But guys, that's actually pretty much it. I just wanted to do my pick'ems live so you guys can see me. And I'll obviously preview the first day of Worlds because there's some pretty good matchups going in. The thing with FlyQuest, I'm not trying to sound like an NA downer, but when you're putting them up against a team of that caliber, this is a team they haven't even witnessed yet in LCS. Like no team in LCS plays like Top Esports, obviously, because of the disparity between players, right? I think a team like Top Esports, let's say if Top Esports match what FlyQuest want to do, which is like mid-scaling, ADC scaling, the whole scaling thing FlyQuest does. Top could just match that too and just play it way better. Like if you want to do that, if people want to say, well, FlyQuest can win like this, well, I could just say Top could just win like that too with the better players. Because like FlyQuest's strength is late game, and Santorin can track the jungler. So is Santorin really going to be able to track Karsa? We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But that's it. Anything else you want to say, Mr. Man?
Not really. I'm starving, man.
Yeah, I'm starving too. I need to get food. See you guys later. Like, comment, subscribe. Most of all, enjoy. That's it. I'm the Nightwing. We have Esports is signing out, guys. Peace. Goodbye.